are, and I'll be your first client. I want to talk about a number of things about Samaritans. One, I'll say something about Samaritans generally. Second, before we talk about the service and the what, the why, and the how, and so on about that, talk a bit about other things that Samaritans do to get that out of the way in some ways, but it is important. Then the service, the what, the why, and the how. Then a bit about Samaritans in Clare, and our payoff from exercises like this. It is an opportunity to canvass for volunteers. So we'll do a bit of that. And then just some thoughts as individuals rather than any potential Samaritan volunteers or anything like that. And I hope to get all that done by 10 minutes. So don't worry. Samaritans was founded in 1953 by an Anglican priest in London, Darragh. One room, one phone initially. First presence in Ireland was in Dublin in 1970. One room in Kildare Street, one phone. And first presence in Clare was in Ennis in 1983. One room, one phone in Abbey Street. Now, across Britain and Ireland, there are 201 branches on this island, and Ireland is a single region for Samaritans purposes. There are 21 branches, 12 in the south, 9 in the north. About 2,500 volunteers. In Dublin today, there are 330 volunteers and up to 8 phones. In Ennis, we have 80 to 90 volunteers. We have got as high as 120, it has retreated a bit in recent years, and 2 phones going most of the time, not quite 24/7, but I'll talk about that. So that is the general picture of Samaritans. Some of the things we do outside of direct service. And first, we are a nationwide organisation, and because of that, and because of our strong public profile as such, we are seen as what I would call a go-to organisation nationally on issues relating to suicide. So we, along with Pieta House, would be a partner with the HSE in developing suicide prevention strategy. Something specific that shows the kind of policy input we have. The Press Council in 2014 changed its rules for the print publications that abide by its charter to make the reporting of suicide and particularly methods of suicide much more sensitive and much more discreet, to de-glamorise and to reduce the likelihood of copycat suicides. And that was in consultation with Samaritans. Something else we do, I call training trainers. We have our volunteers and they spend most of their time delivering the service from their branch. But it is good to be able to extend the ethos of Samaritans more widely. For example, we train organisations like the Irish Cancer Society, Age Action, where people there would be dealing with people who would have some fragility in their lives, and the Samaritans sort of antennae and the active listening methods, that's a valuable string to those organisations' book. Another one is the GAA, and it is particularly shocking to see the incidence of suicide in young men generally, but we've all heard cases, particularly the hurler in Galway a couple of years ago, which really struck people very profoundly. Young men who seem to have everything going for them, not just in terms of their professional career, but their health, their sporting career, gone. Now the GAA has responded to that. There's supposed to be in every club a mental health officer, and Samaritans is sort of riding the back of that horse in advising and guiding the GAA. Now there's so many clubs, and the GAA is a slow-moving organisation, but that is very much at the seedling stage. But it's an example of the kind of work we do at the national level. Something else we do, because again we're nationwide, we have a large number of volunteers, and we have an infrastructure for having phones on call 24/7. So other organisations, particularly in the mental health space, the LGBT helpline, AWARE, they can't do 24/7. So they pass their phones over to us at a certain stage in the evening. we'll take the call and we'll offer our own services, but at least even if they don't want us, they have got something better than a dead line. And in 2015 we took about 2,000 calls of that nature. We do things like this, because just taking a bit of space for people to reflect, not just on suicide, but principally on suicide, and on the work we do, that is not just an academic exercise, but relevant to your own lives. We call it this kind of outreach exercise. And probably on a more cheerful note, just to finish on the what I call the extracurricular activities, we have a thing called Festival Branch. And during the summer, volunteers go on top of their normal duty in the branch. They go off to about 8 or 9 events, nationwide events, including, for example, Flacchio, the Lisbon Varna Matchmaking Festival. They have a van that is sort of signals their presence wherever they are. They bring their sleeping bags, they sleep on community halls or school floors or something like that, and for the weekend that's in it, they are there walking around the van, and people come up to them and get the service. So that's some of the other things we do. Now to the core service that everyone associates with Samaritans. And just to put some context, and Richard put a much richer and deeper context than I'm going to put now. But a couple of years ago, Samaritans in Britain conducted a public survey called Talk to Us. And that found, and these figures are approximate, but about 1 in 3 of us experiences significant and serious sense of being overwhelmed by life and the problems. And, it's beyond frazzle at various times in our lives. 2 in 5 of us would be reluctant to tell anybody about that, because for fear of burdening people with our problems. 1 in 6 of us, after we've thought about it and everything like that, we don't tell them. And 1 in 8 of us, we retreat. We spend more time alone and in isolation. So when I think of Irish society, one thing I love about it, we're very social, but we're very respectful of people's reserve and privacy. And that is when I saw those statistics about being reluctant to burden people and people retreating into isolation. I think that's entirely understandable. So if I were to come up with one thing that Samaritans is about, we provide an outlet to people that in some ways don't involve them in a neighbourly or a community contact, because it's anonymous, it's confidential, it is mainly down a telephone line. So people can be open with some degree of ease. We are there for anybody who's going through a difficult emotional time in their lives, for whatever reason, including potentially feeling suicide, but not remotely limited to that. I would say about somewhere between 10 and 20% of our calls have a suicidal dimension of some kind or another. But no problem is too big or too small. And on top of that, what might seem when you're analysing in an academic way, whether a problem is big or small, that doesn't matter. If you have a problem that's big for you, that's a big problem. So anonymity, confidentiality, 24/7, those are important. Probably the 2 most important dimensions, and I'm speaking personally when I say it, we are ordinary people. We are not sort of trained in psychology. We don't have recipe books or encyclopedias that are coming through when people come along and do what I say to them. And I think callers appreciate that we are just like them and live life just like them. And second, because we're ordinary people, we don't judge or advise or suggest solutions. And thank God for that. It's very liberating for us and liberating for the callers. So we listen and we engage, but we don't tell them what to do. So if you're thinking, so somebody going through a difficult time, they're stumbling through a path, we don't push them. We hold their arm. And they stumble forward themselves, but with support, not steering. Okay? Now, how do we do all that? I work up from we've 3 or 4 channels for doing things. One that I know nothing about is we have a texting contact service. And I know nothing about that because it hasn't hit Ennis yet. But it's gradually, like the grey squirrel, it's making its way across Ireland and will eventually hit Ennis, I think, sometime next year. But in 2015, something around 7,000 contacts to Samaritans branches were by SMS. The next is face-to-face. We take 8,000 visitors a year across the island of Ireland. The Ennis branch on Kilrush Road is open from 10 in the morning to 10 at night. We don't get that many face-to-face because I think people prefer the anonymity of a phone. And it's really, however hard it is to pick up the phone, and God knows it's hard to pick up the phone and sustain a call, but to call in, that's tricky. We do email, and across the island we do about 16,000 of those a year. And email is important because it's more a younger person's medium, and the people who write to us an email, generally there tends to be a higher instance of problems that are potentially suicidal. So the email is definitely important. But all of those are dwarfed by the telephone. From Ireland, within Ireland, there's about 600,000 calls a year. And now it has shot up significantly since we got the free phone number at the end of 2014, 116123. And I would qualify, 600,000 is a big number. About half of those, they make the call, and when the call is answered, the phone goes down. Some of that would be, when it comes to the crunch, people, no, just not ready to do this. Some of it would be, we're a free phone, and every free phone in the country gets cranks and pranksters. And that just goes with the territory, and there's nothing we can do to filter that out. You live with it, part of the territory. But a significant number of telephone calls. What do our callers get from us? Before I say that, I should say the 5 most important things, and in no particular order: loneliness, family and relationships, anxiety, depression, stroke, mental health, and last, and particularly in the present day and age, unsurprisingly, money. Those are the things. To illustrate, now, it's a confidential service, but I'm not breaking any confidence in describing a short call I once had. A woman called me up and said, I did something some years ago that I regret. I'm very happily married, great relationship with my husband, but I just want to tell somebody about this thing. And she told me about it. And I said, now, you can consider yourself to have told somebody, and just between worse things have happened at sea. In terms of things to regret, this is low on the scale. And she was very happy, down went the phone. And that, in some ways, tells us what it's all about. I think a problem shared is a problem eased, at least. Second, that was a simple call, in certain ways. For more complex things, the caller articulating to themselves what their issues are, in some ways contains it just a small. The caller presents they're describing what's bothering them to me, but they're really doing it to themselves. And having to articulate it is valuable. The caller gets time, gets respect, feels listened to. We don't run a time clock. We will err on the side, even it's becoming repetitive. We can't keep them open forever because the other caller is waiting behind. But we will keep it going as long as we can. And does it work? Does it not work? I don't know. We get positive feedback. We get callers coming back and saying, but for you, I would be somewhere else. So that is the service. Samaritans in Clare, as I said, we've about 80 or 90 volunteers. The service that we can provide from Clare in terms of phone coverage is strictly functional of the number of volunteers we have. So we're open about 140 hours a week. Now, that doesn't mean that if you somehow want, that coverage, if you call Samaritans, is somehow curtailed. Because all of the branches are networked together. If you call 116123, your call goes into a computer that hunts around and finds an open branch, and there's always some branches open. But the more volunteers every branch has, and the more every branch is able to stay open up to the 168 hours, the quicker your call will be answered. We do have an issue with engaged rates, and callers finding themselves they just can't get through at certain times of day or night, depending on the the nationwide coverage. So that's one of the reasons why we're always looking for more volunteers, because the more volunteers we have, the more we can contribute to the overall nationwide coverage. We cost about €50,000 a year to run, and that comes mainly from church gate collections and from donations. We get no grants, there are no salaries, it's not Barry's tea, and we don't do any chocolate biscuits. Well, we do some, but not great. And it's instant coffee, which I detest. Why would I suggest to somebody, volunteering, each person makes their own call of what works, try to do all of what works for them. What is good about Samaritans as a volunteering organisation? Well, it's public service. You're doing something for other people, and it's a cliche, but giving is in a lot of ways more rewarding than getting. Second, and here's the selfish hook, the training and the skills development and the practice of being a Samaritan is very developmental. If I sum it up in a sentence, I used to, even though I'm talking a lot now, I used to talk a lot more and listen less. I listen more now and talk less. I'm still very impatient, very present, but I'm a tiny bit better. Even my wife would admit it, though she wouldn't say it very much. But even then, I did a lot of professional negotiation. And once I tuned into this organisation, just sit there, say nothing most of the time, you're generally a better negotiator. So from a naked self-interest point, it is a developmental skill in business and in personal life. Being able to listen easier. It's a nice bunch of people who are very supportive of each other, that look out for each other, and some people develop social relationships that endure for life as a consequence of it, but it's a good crew. Some people have been there for 30 plus, Richard's father being one, 30 plus years. Some people come and they go. And of course that's another reason why we need volunteers, because inevitably something of that scale there is renewal. Aside from the duties, there are outlets for people to do other things. The place needs to be administered, there's training, there's recruitment, there's managing the money, all kinds of other things. So it's something to be think about. We run two recruitment sessions in the spring and in the autumn every year, and they're pretty well publicised. But if you have any interest, is it Ennis Samaritans at aircom.net. That's us. And then last, just the individual thing. I talked about the 1/3, the overwhelmed, and people reluctant to burden themselves, and people treating into isolation. And I would just say two messages about yourselves from that. Err on the side when you're around your friends, if you have any sense of there being something. Just say, is everything okay? And in relation to yourself, if things are wobbly, say to yourself, might it help to talk to somebody? And I'm not saying call Samaritan necessary, but might it help to talk to somebody, anybody, whoever you feel is suitable. And those are the two thoughts which I would leave. Thank you very much for your time.